So, the feminization of men. What does that mean? I talked about how in other videos how the standard of what being successful is in the West is masculine, right? Getting jobs, getting cars, buying houses, bringing home the bacon. These are masculine traits, right? But what I didn't talk about is how the education of men and women and how the standard of how you're supposed to behave as a human being is feminine. You see, as men in Western society, we're expected to be docile, submissive, cooperate, keep our voices low, not show any signs of anger or masculinity. We're not allowed to really express ourselves in our masculine sense, without getting the cops called on us or being told we're being rude or abrasive or, hyper. And the reason they want to keep a lid on our masculinity is so we're easier to control. The reason they give boys depression medication in schools, or not depression medication, but like Ritalin, ADD medication, all these things, they make up. I honestly don't believe ADHD exists. I think boys are just hyper when they're younger. I was very hyper as a kid, but as I grew older, I calmed down. So I think they create, things like ADHD so that they can medicate boys and keep them under control. You give a boy all these ADD medications at 7, 8 years old while his brain is still developing. That's going to have a curving effect on his masculinity as he gets older. His brain, his body is still developing. He's not completely formed yet. So you have a boy taking ADHD medication from 7 years old all the way up until he's 25. That's going to have a significant amount effect on the amount of testosterone he's producing. That's going to really, do a lot of damage psychologically to the development of these boys. And it's so that by the time they're in their 20s and 30s, they're easier to control. The reason why women excel so much more than boys in school is because the education environment is very feminized. Sitting at a desk and writing on paper for 8 hours a day, that's a very feminine thing to do. Men, we're not born to do that. We're supposed to be out in the woods exploring, building stuff, conquering, creating. We're not meant to be sitting at a desk for 8 to 10 hours, reciting Shakespeare and writing in cursive and just sitting there. I remember when I was a kid, after 30, 40 minutes, I'm like, dude, I want to go outside. I want to explore. I want to be around my guy friends and go do man stuff. I don't want to be sitting at a desk, solving math problems all day. It's not natural for men. It's not natural for boys. And that's why they have to drug us to get us to stay in these environments, because it's not natural. It's a man-made institution. It's a man-made concept. Women excel more in education because women are better at taking orders and being more subservient. Women are followers by default. They're not leaders. So a follower can sit at a desk for 8 hours, 10 hours and write on paper and do, learn stuff out of textbooks. Men, we need to go out and create and explore and conquer, and really get a true understanding of how the world works. But, we're not allowed to do that. They want you to be masculine in the way that you pump money into the economy, into the way that you, work at your job and stimulate, the society. But they want you to be feminine in the way that you behave so that you're easier to control. So they want you masculine in the sense that you're making a bunch of resources that can be drained out of you, through taxation. But they want you to be feminine in the way you behave so you're easier to control. So there isn't a riot. So there isn't a revolution. They don't have to drug women as hard as at a young age because women naturally cooperate. There's a reason why so many of the masculine leaders from history have been killed or, suffered a mysterious death or whatever. There's a reason why all role models today are feminized. You turn on the TV, what role models are there for men? There's no Malcolm X in 2018 for men to look up to. There's no tough guys to look up to in 2018 for men, maybe besides sports players, which, come on. So you turn on the TV, all the media is feminized. All the TV channels are feminized. There really isn't hardly any TV shows for men anymore. I think there's like Spike TV, but they play dumb, stuff like, drinking beer and Star Wars. It's not stuff you can really emulate in the real world, right? So I think that's why so many boys gravitate towards like anime and like Dragon Ball Z and stuff like that, because that's one of the last shows, one of the last, categories of TV where men can see masculine men fighting and conquering and being alpha males. But anyways, one of the reasons why, the society is so feminized and they want to keep boys under control. Imagine if boys didn't take ADD medication. Imagine if men didn't smoke weed that calms them down and drink alcohol that gives them a buzz and keeps them, in control. Imagine if they didn't do any of that. Imagine if you had a city like New York, right? And you had 100,000 men running around that were completely sober, that had all their testosterone, never took any drugs in their life, never took any prescription medication or ADD medication, never went to school, right? And they all had a leader that they looked up to. Let's say like a guy like Malcolm X, right? Who's like, we need to create a new regime around here. Let's say there's 100,000 guys that think like Malcolm X, right? Intelligent but still masculine and have their testosterone. Now let's say all 100,000 of those men started their own little militias, right? They have their own little groups. Let's say they have their own little groups of 50 to 100 men, and they're going to plot some kind of revolution, how they're going to take over, the country or whatever. Let's say they're like, we're sick of paying taxes, we're sick of living in a feminized society, we want to take over. Imagine if there was 100,000 men that thought like that had their own little armies. Imagine what a pain that would be for the government to try to silence those men. They pose a massive threat to the order that we have now. They would pose a massive threat to the society we live in, and there would be a revolution and there would be a crazy war. So they keep men feminized and docile and under prescription medications and drugs and alcohol, and they put all this into society to keep men in order so that there isn't some sort of revolution, so that there isn't some sort of rebellion against the way things are. They keep the majority of men docile and beta and feminized so that a small group of men at the top can sleep comfortably at night and not have to worry about their little, order, their little society being overthrown by a bunch of men. You don't have to do much to keep women in order because women are nesters naturally. Women don't care so much about freedom. They want creature comforts. They want to know they're in a nice, safe house with air conditioning and the bills paid and they have their little 2 kids or 3 kids. That's enough for women. But men, we seek more than that to have completion. We want to have complete power and freedom over our lives. Not only do we want to have our wife and kids or whatever, but we want to know that we are the shapers of our own destinies. We control our futures, and no man can tell us what to do. Until a man is in that position, I don't think he can truly achieve happiness and fulfillment, and myself included. I don't think I'll ever be completely happy until I am 100% in control of my own life. And under a society like this, a feminized, gynocentric society where men are neutered from such a young age, psychologically, I don't see that happening. But anyways, guys, that's the feminization of men.